students, welcome to the third part of Yojana for the month of January 2024. Now we've covered in the earlier two parts these topics, the Jan Vishwas Act, which talks about ease of doing business, ease of living. In the second part, we've covered government e-marketplace, where we've seen how, the popularity of GEM and the usage of GEM is increasing year by year. And then we also talked about GST and ease of doing business. We saw how the GST base has more than doubled since its inception in 2017. Now more around 1.4 crore entities are paying GST, and how it has enabled ease of doing business. In this particular part, we are going to do a standout topic which was not, or which was different from the theme of Yojana magazine, that was ease of doing business. But yes, this is Indo-African relationship amid South-South cooperation. Okay. So South-South simply means global South. So when we talk about India-Africa, proximity is there, geographical proximity if I talk about. If I talk about historical connections have been there right from Indus Valley civilization to the present times. If I talk about investments by both the entities, like investments by India and Africa, they are there. By African countries in India, they are there. Although those investments are routed via Mauritius into India, because Mauritius is considered to be a tax haven country. That is why many Western countries, or many companies located in the Western countries, they route their investments into India via Mauritius. So we can say that African investments in India are also there. In fact, if I talk about the total stock of investment, the African investment in India is more as compared to Indian investments in Africa or African countries. So we will look into all this in this particular video. The Global South basically has claimed space in international multilateralism as a unique voice. Now, Global South, we need to understand what Global South is. Global South is developing and underdeveloped countries of three continents: Asia, Africa, South America largely. It has nothing to do with geographical southern hemisphere. One such country or many countries in the southern hemisphere are developed. They are not part of Global South. Many countries in northern hemisphere are developing or underdeveloped. They are part of Global South. Like India is Global South, Africa is Global South. That is why we are saying that South-South cooperation. And in the present day scenario, in the present day world, the Global South is increasingly gaining momentum, is increasingly, I would say, gaining that geopolitical weightage at the global level. India has strategically placed itself as voice of the Global South. Now, when we became the president of G20, 2022 end, we at that time claimed that we are going to be the voice of the Global South. Voice of the Global South simply means that we are going to table their concerns at the G20 level. See, every country in Global South has one vote in the United Nations. They look up to us because we have been a champion for them in the past as well. We act like a messiah for them. It is our intentions, it is our values that has enabled us to earn that stature. And they look up to us in any times of crisis. COVID came, they looked up to us. They were dependent on vaccines made in India. We did supply them. They were dependent on logistics and medicinal supplies from India. We supplied them, and we helped them in good faith. Now, an example of good faith is like our investments in African countries are also in the social sector, which enable building their capacity, means the capacity of Africans, like healthcare, education and all. Whereas Chinese investments largely you will see in economic sphere only. They are there to exploit the resources, take out the profits, take the profits back home. employment generation and all is done in this pursuit for the Africans over there. That is something which is there. But yes, largely there the Chinese investments are not there in the social sector. But our investments you will see in the social sector in Africa. That is why, you know, they respect us. Although the investments in social sector are not so rewarding as compared to investments in the economic sector. So we have investments in economic sector also, but in social sector also we have. What I mean to say is, so we have a good rapport with them. We share a good, I would say, connection with them, because we have kept their concerns, we have addressed their concerns, whether at the bilateral level or at multilateral level. At multilateral level means at the global level, we have clearly said that we want to be the voice of the global south, means we want to keep the concerns these small countries are facing. There are many concerns related to, you know, trade practices, global warming or climate change, disasters happening. Then this climate equity is not there, health equity is not there. So we've kept all these kind of concerns at the global table on behalf of the global south, and many of them have been addressed also by India's diplomatic interventions. We promised African Union to make them a permanent member of G20 in 2022, and we delivered on that promise in 2023 during the G20 summit in New Delhi, and that has, you know, raised the confidence between India and Africa presently. Actually, the confidence is going on this trajectory, and it is very important for India to, you know, cash on this rising, I would say, confidence among Indian and African countries. But we need to keep on addressing the concerns of the global south, then only this confidence trajectory will be maintained. Then only we will be able to earn the confidence of the Africans. Now, what are the issues faced? Adverse terms of global trade. Now, many a times, now these global multilateral organizations like World Bank or IMF, they are at times discriminatory in nature, or even for that matter World Trade Organization. So we need to, you know, initiate some reforms, we need to advocate for reforms so that these kind of, you know, global trade practices are not biased, they are even for everybody. And when they are biased, at the receiving end is the poorest of the poor countries. Lack of investment and financing opportunities. People don't want to finance, people don't want to invest. People means either countries or entities like World Bank or IMF, because, you know, they consider less viable the funding given to any underdeveloped country. There may be high chances that this funding is not recovered, so they do not disburse loans. As a result, they remain poor. Possibility of sovereign debt defaults. Sovereign debt defaults means the government will not be able to repay the loans and in time. So there can be debt defaults due to this. So that is why, you know, this discrimination is there. Political instability, okay, that is also high. If I talk about, you know, countries in West Africa, there are presently around 6 or 7 countries which are under military rule, or there have been coups over there. So situation is already, they are poor, poverty is there, unemployment is there, hunger is there, and on top of that political stability is also not there. That also creates a problem. Exploitation of mineral reserves by outsiders. So outsiders come, they exploit the mineral reserves and they take all the profits. Since these people are not so aware, not so educated, they are not able to do anything, or anything great they are not able to do. So all these things are actually the concerns of the global south. Apart from it, very recently 4 C's have been into picture. First is COVID, second is climate, third is conflict, and fourth is cost of living crisis. These 4 C crises are there. So COVID, it had impacted the economy, it had impacted the health. We all know this. And since the economy was impacted, so it was very difficult from that situation to recover. And if you are an already struggling economy and after this crisis comes, then things become worse. So COVID had impacted the entire world. There was no exception as such. But the responses to those situations, they were different. And the responses were able to, I would say, save a country or destroy a country. Then next is climate change. Now climate change, generally it is believed that it has been the activity of the developed world, because the emissions which are causing global warming or climate change have been emitted by the developed countries, the developed West. But yes, due to climate change, a lot of disasters are happening. More number of cyclones, heat waves, droughts, floods. And these kind of disasters are not happening in the developed West only. They are impacting one and all. So the global South thinks that we have not contributed for this menace, but we are at the receiving end of this menace. This menace is impacting us negatively, and disasters, they cause a lot of damages. So this is there. Plus climate funding as promised by the developed world is not available. Then conflict, whether I talk about Russia, Ukraine, or I talk about West Asia, the conflicts have the potential to cause unnecessary inflation. Now, the developed countries will be able to bear the consequences, bear the inflation, although they will be impacted negatively also. But the poor countries, the struggling ones, the impact on them will be exacerbated. Actually, in Russia-Ukraine war, 3 Fs were the talk of the town. 3 Fs means fertilizer, fuel and food. All these 3 products, the inflation was very high. Food, fertilizer and fuel, all 3 are basic commodities. The developed countries will be able to manage the losses, but what about the developed and developing and underdeveloped? It is them which will be severely impacted due to this. And cost of living, this crisis, cost of living can be increased due to multiple factors. Political instability can lead to this situation, international climate or geopolitical conflicts can lead to this. So all these are the factors due to which the global South will be impacted more severely as compared to the global North. And most of these phenomena are happening in the global North. Now India's ties with Africa, if I talk about historical ties, so historical ties may, from Indus Valley civilization, trade between IVC and Africa have been documented. Greek accounts mention ties between India and Egypt. Later in the medieval period, several Africans like the Abyssinians worked in multiple Indian kingdoms. Then when the Britishers came, so there were a lot of colonies of the Europeans in Africa. India was also a colony. So people were taken from India to work as laborers over there. Those people were called as indentured laborers because they were taken forcefully and they were underpaid or unpaid. Or there was another name given to them, that was Grimitias. So this happened. Mahatma Gandhi went to Africa and developed his style of resistance against the Britishers over there. The Satyagraha and all, it was developed in South Africa. And many leaders like Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, etc., they have adopted Gandhian ethics in their respective movements against their opponents. So they owe to the Gandhian ethics. They clearly have testified it in the past. So historically, we have been in connect with Africa. When I talk about the ties in the post-independence era, both of them have opposed to the notion of neo-colonialism. Neo-colonialism is what? You extend debt to a country, give loans to a country, and you are not present over there as a colonizer. The person who has given loans or the country who has given loans is not present there as a colonizer like Britishers were there in India or Britishers were there in Africa. But yes, you make them obey what you want. That is neo-colonialism, and that happens on this. China is involved into this debt traps and all it lays. So that is a kind of an example of neo-colonialism. So we both oppose neo-colonialism, in which physically your presence is not there, but all the actions taken by the small countries or underdeveloped or developing countries is driven by the directions coming from the big countries who have extended, loans to them or giving any kind of aid or help to those small countries. So both of us have been an opposition, or we have opposed neo-colonialism. India has been at the forefront of UN activism by taking keen interest in stability and well-being of newly independent African countries. Now, we've always, contributed in bringing in or ushering in political stability in Africa, because there was a lot of political instability. Still, there is a lot of political instability in African continent, because newly formed countries were there. They were fighting with each other, due to which political stability was not there. They're still fighting with each other, some of them. So we have always contributed in this. We've always wanted political stability to be there, and we have also been a major contributor in the peacekeeping missions for Africa, including the first mission on UN on African soil in Congo from 1960 to 64. The Bandung Conference, which happened in 1955, which became the basis of non-aligned movement to be started. Both of these entities, like India and Africa, participated in the Bandung Conference in 1955. Now, when I talk about cooperation in multilateral forums, we cooperate with each other, and there are various domains in which we support each other, like United Nations Security Council reforms. Now, India supports Azulvini Consensus. Azulvini Consensus is basically a consensus adopted by African Union in the year 2005, and UN reforms for it is for, and particularly UNSC. So one of the objectives of Azulvini Consensus is that there should be reforms in United Nations, and particularly in United Nations Security Council, where they should be represented as a permanent member, because no one from African continent is part of United Nations Security Council. So African continent is not represented over there or unrepresented over there. So that has to be done, and India, since it is wanting it from very long time, definitely supports Azulvini Consensus, because we also want reforms in the UNSC reform or United Nations, I would say. Demand for global health equity. Global health equity is like the developed countries are doing research and development in this domain, and they find cure for diseases which are presently impacting the lives of the people in Africa. But those cure for the diseases are not given easily by the developed countries to these underdeveloped or developing countries. Why? Because they want money for that, and these people cannot give money, so it is not given to them. So that is where they are demanding that we want health equity, that any findings anywhere, any cure found anywhere for any diseases, they should be given to everyone. They should be accessible to everyone. This is how humanity will be restored, and this is what India also promotes, the same thing. Climate justice. They have done nothing. They have done no historical emissions, the African people. But yes, they are impacted by climate change. So how this situation should be tackled? The ones who have done, the developed countries of today, they should be giving money to the developing or underdeveloped world. Climate finance it is called as. And they should also be investing in technologies over here, I would say green technologies or climate friendly technologies, so that these countries do not walk on the path of exorbitant emissions. Energy security, that should be secured, because many of these countries have the resources, but resources are exploited by outsiders and taken for their benefit. But here energy security is not there. So these are the concerns basically, I would say these are the domains in multilateral institutions in which both the countries are converging. Now, apart from these domains, engagements are witnessed in BRICS. We can see South Africa is there, and BRICS generally is considered to be a champion of the global South. ECOWAS, economic activities in Western African states, African Continent Free Trade Agreement, International Solar Alliance, where many African countries are there part of it, and CDRI, that is Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. The last two, ISA, that is International Solar Alliance, and CDRI, both are a brainchild of India and headquartered in India, which talks about the concerns of the developing and underdeveloped world in this domain of climate change or global warming. Now, economic significance of India and Africa. When I talk about this, so India has been an active participant in the Exim Bank's Focus Africa program. 17 India-Africa conclaves have happened till 2022. These enclaves are basically targeting increasing investment and trade between the two entities. Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Partnership signed with Mauritius in 2021. We did, because a lot of investment comes into India from Mauritius. India's Southern African Customs Union, SACU, Preferential Trade Agreement, this is there, signed. Trade between India and Africa has grown multiple folds since 2001. The African exports to India are growing at 23% annually. Overall, trade reached 100 billion USD in 2022-23, which is quite substantial in itself. India is among the top 5 investors in Africa. Now, we will see that in what domains India is investing in Africa. The current stock of Indian investment in Africa are 32 billion USD. However, you will be shocked that the current stock of African investment in India is 73 billion USD. Why? Because lot of FDI in India is coming via Mauritius. Mauritius is always among the top 5 FDI source or FDI destinations in India. Why through Mauritius? Because Mauritius is considered as a tax haven. So, some tax savings are done for the corporates if they route their investments via Mauritius into India. That is why you see African investments in India are more as compared to Indian investments in Africa. Now, PSUs like ONGC have invested in Northern and Western Africa for oil exploration and extraction. Reliance Limited has procured oil blocks in Nigeria and Madagascar. Several major Indian companies have made investments in South Africa, Sudan, Egypt and Mozambique. Now, in Egypt, there is this Suez Canal. The Suez Canal development project is coming up, where a lot of industries on the sidelines of the Suez Canal are being developed. China is investing there, and India is also investing there. Last year, the Egyptian president was invited as the chief guest of this Republic Day. So, we are also increasing our presence over there in Egypt. A lot of Indian industries are opening up in Egypt. That is the Suez Canal Industrial Development Project, which is on the sidelines of the Suez Canal, which will be getting us easier access to the European market and the African market, both of them, plus the West Asian market also. So, this is what our plans are in the future. The sectors in which investments are done: agri-business, pharmaceuticals, information and communication technology. These 3 domains we have the expertise. Energy, because we are into exploration and exploitation of energy resources, ONGC, Reliance and all. And we have also set up petroleum refineries over there in Africa. We have the expertise in petroleum refineries. And most importantly, the social sector of Africa, education, healthcare, sanitation and all, we are working in this domain also. We are also working in giving them this digital public infrastructure, which has helped us transform our, I would say, governance. By doing this, we are actually transforming the African society and impacting their lives. This should be there. A mix of this should be there, means economic investments are there and social sector, that should not be neglected. This will keep us apart. This will keep us different from other countries like China or the developed West, which come with the intention of only exploiting. But we, since don't go with this intention of only exploiting, we go with this intention of developing their capacity also, we will always be given preference by the Africans in the longer run. This we need to take care of, and obviously these kind of decisions or these kind of investments or these kind of domains are driven by our core principles, our core values, which needs to be intact. So, this we need to understand with respect to Africa, the South-South cooperation, between India and Africa, and how the future can be shaped. And with this, we've come to an end of this month's Yojana, that is January. I will be meeting you now in February with the February month's Yojana magazine. Till then, you guys keep reading, keep writing, keep learning, and obviously keep revising. Do read the original text of Yojana, that will definitely be helpful to you. Namaste, Jai Hind.